Hello, Grandmaster.
Yeah, I forgot to wear my badge. Okay, sir.
Okay, well, we're ready to start. You happy for us to get going?
Yes, sir. Yes, I am
Yeah,
ready.
cool. Okay,
Wait,
so
wait,
I
wait, wait,
just,
wait, 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 wait a minute, sir. Wait a minute. I forgot.
so for anyone who's trained with the Grandmaster on Zoom, it's like this green cave of Yoda here that he sneaks off into and comes back.
Yeah, I am here in my computer. The thing that you know that I want to say in my in my turn later on.
No worries. Well, while you're getting set up, Grandmaster, I'll just start firstly by acknowledging that we're on the land here of the Awabakal people, and of the Pambalong clan of the Awabakal people, and that this is land that was never ceded. I think it's really important in our martial art traditions, right, to show our respect to where
Yes,
we've got
sir.
our knowledge from, and we're certainly thankful for all the knowledge that Grandmaster Bernas has shared with us so far and continues to share. We're still learning all the time, despite whatever rank he wishes to give someone. It's a journey we're on together. It's I'm always impressed with how the Grandmaster himself is constantly evolving his system. So although this has got traditional roots, it is very much a product of the Grandmaster's experience and insights.
Yes.
I'd like to welcome everyone who's come from near and far to our students here, to my fellow Mananadlo who are here, and also to all the people who've come
Yes.
connected from overseas, who are here to kind of celebrate with us today's promotion. So I'm going to hand over to the
Yes.
Grandmaster who wants to say a few words, and then we'll get on with the actual process. Over to you, Grandmaster.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay. Uh,
give,
Hello,
give him a lock
everyone.
on.
Yeah. Once again, hello, everyone. Welcome to our most awaited moment in the history of Bernas Estocadas. I will be gratefully say thank you so much for your presence to witness this very memorable moment to both of us. With Sir Robert for our successful venture in Bernas Estocadas way of learning. We've been teaching. I've been teaching him for a long time already. I think it's more than 3 years of exploring my style, and he only canceled 4 times in that certain period of time. Others say that learning online is not good because the result will be uh, very low quality compared to face to face. Yes, I agree. But I have my own way to teaching students in the same quality as actual training. And this is and now the result of all the efforts that we've been going through. And as the founder, grandmaster of this art, it's my honor to give him the highest level of promotion that never been happened in my group before. Yeah, I thought before that it would be my fellow Filipino who will be receiving the first master promotion, but it's not. That's why I really believe in destiny because it's the one who will dictate what would be happening in the future. So once again, welcome and witness our unique presentation that we have been preparing for the graduation promotion of my first ever promoted student as Agálon or master in Bernas Estocadas. Thank you so much, sir. Uh,
Thanks, Grandmaster,
yeah,
and saludo.
saludos, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey in terms of the art. I'll do my best to do the Grandmaster proud and our school proud. Sorry.
Too early for that.
Relax.
It's partly because my mum's watching as well. Hi, mum. So actually, I'm going to take you on a journey through the system. I did want to just make a note that I started my martial art training in 1980, and my first exposure to Filipino martial arts was in 1982. And it just so happens that coincided with the Grandmaster's development of his own system. And so I've kind of been on a journey in the wilderness until I was introduced by my De Campo teacher, Paulo Pagaling, who shared with us initially part of the journey. One of the greatest things for us was being introduced to Grandmaster Bernas and being exposed to his system. And finding a home for lots of things that we had before, but we didn't, as I was just talking to one of my students, we didn't have the architecture for. And one of the great things about Grandmaster's system is the underlying architecture, which keeps repeating at different levels with little tweaks and different ways of thinking about it. So a fair bit of today will not only be, it's not really so much of a technical a demonstration, although of course that will happen, but it's really giving insight into the concepts behind the system and the pedagogical logic of the system and how it builds, which I think is one of the most important aspects. So we'll get underway. I'm just going to ask Beck to share the first slide. Later. Okay, so I just wanted to start really quickly because you're going to see some of our members of our club here demonstrating various things. You'll notice that there's a sort of coloured ring around their shirts. The Grandmaster's system is built, the colours are built on the ripening of the apple mango, which is the Filipino mango. And it kind of moves through phases of green, going yellowish to orange to red. And the symbolism is the idea of you are ripening as you develop in the system. So it starts with really students understanding the 12 fundamental strikes and being able to move fluidly while advancing with those strikes and blocks. Then they move to where they can move in multiple directions and move in consecutive sequences with those same techniques. And then at Habal, the techniques become more complex. And today we had a seminar with Grandmaster just before this, where he introduced to my students the idea of the consonants and vowels, which I'll talk about shortly. And that's really where the complex sequences start, being able to move in multiple directions, incorporating 12 strikes with what we call the palabulak or the flowering strikes. As you move on, you basically, the training gets more random at certain points and more intense. And that's what develops the skill. So I'm going to talk a little bit quickly about the alphabet of Bernas Estocadas. There is 12 fundamental strikes in the system. You'll notice here that they're color-coded. So the strikes from Abierta here are coded in black, and the strikes coming from Serrata are coded in white. I'll demonstrate that in a sec, what that actually means. But you can see the various kinds of targets here of the different strikes. They start, like many systems, as being targeted to specific points, but as you develop your skill, they become more like trajectories that could be applied to different targets. Again, I'll explain that in a second. There's 3 fundamental ways of hitting that we use in the system. So we can strike the target and retract, which actually I should start again. We can strike the target and stop on it if I'm following the circles on the screen, which we call depondo or an anchored strike. We can strike through the target, which we call diretso, which means direct, or we can hit and retract on the same line, which we call delastical, which is what many other systems would call witique. There's also what we call the so of the 12 fundamental strikes of the consonants, we have then 4 palabulak, which are like the vowels of the system. They roughly translate in terms of the images you can see on the screen. So wasiwas means like wagging, like a dog's tail. Redonda means round. Abanico means fanning, and pau-pau means like pegging, if you like, and they're the fundamental movements. So Beck just drops that off. So in terms of those strikes, as I was just mentioning, if we throw a number one strike on the trajectory, it starts initially as a strike to the temple, but it could be a strike to the elbow, it could be a strike to the knee. The important thing is the trajectory of the strike. I mean, if we went for a number three strike, it starts as a strike towards the knee, but over time, what actually happens is you learn that it's about the trajectory, not specifically the target. So I could go down to the knee, but I could also take that strike up to someone's elbow. I could take it up to their chin, for example. And we have different names for those strikes as we kind of move on. So in terms of the way the system works, there's a series of ways of thinking about putting the strikes together. And we can think about that in terms of, if you like, the syntax of the system. So if we think about the system as the language, then we have the consonants, the 12 fundamental strikes of the system, which are these strikes here. We have the vowels, which are the abanico, the redonda. We have the pal, and we have the wasiwas, or if we're coming from the other side, wasiwas. So those strikes get put together. You're going to see that shortly in the way in which the Grand Master utilises that to develop freedom of movement. So I'm going to leave much more discussion about that to a little bit later. When you start with what we call tag isa. So tag means each, isa one. So tag isa techniques are where you're doing the techniques singularly, right? So a student would begin as learning, just say, number one strike as tag isa. So they'd be learning it as a single strike. The next level, we go to what we call tag dua, which is where we strike in combinations of two, tag tatlo, combinations of three, etc. And that's one of the ways the strikes are built. But the first way that students learn to actually put the strikes together is what we call pares, which means in pairs. So I'm going to ask my students to come up. And we're going to demonstrate the pares. If you could just go back to the next PowerPoint for a second. Yeah. Sorry. Yep. It's in numbers. No, it's the wrong one. Okay. It just takes a second for the PowerPoint to load, sorry. So when we're thinking about syntax, if Beck just moves on one side. So as I mentioned, you can put the strikes together in multiple combinations, and we think about them in this kind of logic. This logic becomes super useful in the system where it appears again and again in terms of how you can modify drills. So if we go to the next slide. The first thing we do is put the strikes together in pairs. So we're going to, the Grandmaster sequenced his strikes, not just in terms of the logic of the sort of symbolism you see on the screen, where we have cross positions and like a T position and a cross position as well. But he also has them in pairs that logically kind of work with each other. And what those pairs do is create a kind of sway in the movement of the system. So I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. So we're going to start where we look at tag dua and tag tatlo in pasanod, which is, so we have a couple of different ways of doing it. We're going to start with normal pares, then we'll go to pasanod pares, and then we're going to look at a way of combining the strikes where abiurta and serrata strikes get combined with each other, which we call lakat. You can kill that now, thanks. So one of the important things about the system is that when you put the pairs together, you get this kind of oscillation movement in the technique, which actually over time teaches you to be dodging, to get out the way, to be kind of fluid in your footwork and movement. The strikes are only ever taught with footwork from the very beginning. We don't just do a strike where we say, oh, well, we're doing strike number 1 or we're doing strike number 2 where we're standing on the spot. They're always taught with footwork from the very beginning. And the idea is to kind of become kind of fluid with that. So what the students are going to demonstrate now is what we call pares. And the standard footwork in pares already builds a kind of movement flexibility. So we do it to an 8th count. And so we strike side to side, and it's like for a 2 count, again for another 2 count, so 4 count. We move forward for a 5th count, move forward for a 6th count, we retreat for a 7th count, retreat for an 8th count, right? And that's the way the pares is actually demonstrated. So I'm just going to call now, and you're going to see my students demonstrate pares, right? So we're going to look at 1 and 2 to start with. So saludo, prepara, okay, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and then prepara. Now we're going to do 3 and 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And prepara. And 5 and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And 7 and 8. Now 7 and 8 changes the pattern a little bit because 7 and 8 goes forward and back initially. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now we have 9 and 10, and again it goes back to the side-to-side pattern, but with a kind of turning movement. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, and then we have 11 and 12, the last 2 movements, and again we move back to a retreating and dancing kind of pattern. So ready, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And saludo. Okay, so that's the fundamental pares for the offenser, for the striking techniques. Now we're going to demonstrate the student's going to demonstrate the fundamental blocking techniques of the system, right? Using again the pares kind of footwork. Okay, so saludo. So prepara, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 5 and 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 7 and 8. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 9 and 10. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, and last 2, 11 and 12. And 1, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And saludo, and I thank the lingot so they can sit down and stay up. So now what we're going to see is what we call the pass and nod version of the same kind of concept. So pass and nod means consecutive or to follow. So when we put strikes together in a consecutive fashion, what happens is instead of just doing 1 and 2 isolated and then 3 and 4 isolated, what we actually do is we put the strikes together in a sequence that goes 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and then 1 to 4. Right? We normally drill this in lots, like sets of 8, but for time we're going to do it just twice each one, right? So we'll be just going like 1 and 2, 1 and 2, and then we'll go 3 and 4, 3 and 4, and then 1 to 4, right? Just twice each. Yep. Alrighty. So ready. Saludo. And preparar. And 1, 2, 3, 4, and preparar. And what I'm going to do this time, to make it to show the way the pairs put together, I'm just going to call 1, and then you'll do it as bam, bam, and then 2, bam, right? So we're doing in pairs. Okay, so 3 and 4. Go. Go. Okay, so now 1 to 4. Go. And go. Okay, excellent. Now we go 5 and 6. So again, same pattern. So go. And go. And 1 to 6. Go. And I think they did it twice. No, well, so what there was once. Okay, sorry, I miscounted. And go. Okay, 7 and 8 on their own. Go. And go. Now 1 to 8. Go. And 9 and 10. And go. And go. 1 to 10. Go. And go. And 11 and 12 on their own. Go. And go. And 1 to 12. Go. And go. And one last, oh, not there yet. One last time. Fast as you can. Go. Okay, so that's the pass and nod kind of logic. We then can do what we call pass and nod tug dua. So what would happen in the tug dua version of the technique is we still work in pairs, but we don't keep the strikes in their consistent pairs now, but we literally go 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, on it goes. We'll just demonstrate that once for time. So you're going to go 1 and 2, and then we'll go 2 and 3. Yeah, got that here. So just once each. Okay. So 1, 2, go. Sorry. 2 and 3, go. 3 and 4, go. 4 and 5, go. 5 and 6, go. 6 and 7, go. 7 and 8, go. 8 and 9, go. 9 and 10, go. 10 and 11, go. 11 and 12, go. Thank you. So that's the Pasanod Tagdua in Opensa. Rather than get them to do the defensa as well, like of pares, which would have been the same kind of pattern we did, like Pasanod pares, it would have been going 1 and 2, and then we go 3 and 4, and then we put them together 1, 2, 3, 4, and we go all the way up to 12. What I'm going to get them to do is just do it in the same Tagdua format, right? So just once for each technique. So we're going to do 1 and 2, defense, yep. Ready, and go. And 3 and 4, sorry, 2 and 3, and go. 3 and 4, go. 4 and 5, go. 5 and 6, go. 6 and 7, go. 7 and 8, go. 8 and 9, go. 9 and 10, go. 10 and 11, go. 11 and 12, go. And that's it. So, so that's the again this principle of using the tagdua, the kind of idea of 2 strikes, and putting together in combination, or in the case of this, the defensa in combinations of 2. Now, the system isn't asking you to kind of get into a situation where, you know, you're infinitely blocking. That's not the idea of the system. And the other thing that's important to realise, which initially takes some time, but then becomes kind of obvious, is that there really isn't actually blocking in the system. So we call them defensa, and the defensa are really counter offense. So if we normally throw a 1 by moving to our left as we strike, when we throw a 1 in defence, when we're defending against a 1, we're still really actually throwing a 1 strike, but now we move to our right to get inside the circle and actually strike down against the opponent's weapon. So when you see it practice in the air, you'll see it kind of stops like a Depondo strike, quite kind of high. And it might in fact be a Depondo strike, because Depondo being the strike that stops on the target. If you ever try to break a coconut and you try to break it with a Dorezzo strike, like a full strike, it tends to knock the coconut away, right? But if you hit it with a Depondo strike, where you stop and let the force go out through the stick, it tends to shatter the shell of the coconut. So these strikes are designed to stop the opponent's Dorezzo attack, or whatever kind of attack they're doing, and actually give it some stick, literally, to stop it. So if Mananadlo Beck came here just for a second, so she threw a 1 strike, I'm actually hitting it and bringing it down initially. Now, the Tagdua principle, which we'll see in a second, shortly in Offensa Defensa, but what we're actually doing is we're defending the strike here. If we just do it like this is Tagisa, so we're just doing 1 each. But we can then, using the Grandmaster's kind of principles of Tagisa, Tagdua, Tagtatlo, etc., we can add to the drill. So, so here, I now move into Tagdua, like a 2 each, because what I'm doing is my initial defense is 1, and then I hit with my second defense after I guard her hand out of the way. So I push her hand out of the way, create space, and then strike with my second strike. If we do it in the kind of tug-tut-law fashion, in a way, this is kind of, I suppose, more tug-a-putt because it's 4 moves, but we could block and then immediately add like 3 counter strikes, for example, which is the way we build the offensive defensive drills. Thank you. So, so the next thing I want to talk about, actually, one last thing. We're going to show, get these guys to show tug-tut-law. So tug-tut-law is strikes in 3. You can do this in many different ways. So, so tug-tut-law often starts with us moving, advancing. So we'd strike on the advance, and then we would strike on the retreat. So we'd move forward with 1, 2, 3, and then we're retreating with 2. Sorry, start again. We're advancing with 1, 2, 3, and then we're retreating with 2, 3, 4, and then advancing with 3, 4, 5, and then retreating with 4, 5, 6, and on we go up to 12. So it can be done like that. But one of the important things is these principles are generative. You're not locked into a set way of doing the drill. So we could invert that whole drill. We could retreat 1, 2, 3, and then we could advance 2, 3, 4, and we could invert it like that. We can break up which movements we use to actually advance or retreat. So I could advance on the 1, retreat on the 2, advance on the 3. We could, in the same pattern, I could retreat on the 1, advance on the 2, retreat on the 3. And at each point, you notice it produces modifications in the way the technique is actually performed, which is what makes it kind of conceptual and fine-tunes the technique as it goes. So if I advance, you'll see that my strikes, my 3 particularly, is coming from the ground and taking out their legs. If I retreat, or like advance on the first one and retreat on the second, so advance, and then I have to retreat, the 3 kind of look similar. If I advance, and then retreat, we get a very different kind of 3, right, which we call batak, or to hit upwards. And so the actual modification of which strike I oscillate my movement in actually changes the actual technique and builds kind of repertoire as the student develops. So this is the fundamental version. So they'll advance, then retreat. This should be done as close. I prefer this one to be done as close to combative as possible, right? So that you have a bit of intent behind what you do, because the idea is that you're advancing and taking out the person when you go, because you've got to have power in your stick if you want to stop someone. All right? Ready? And stop. And go. And 3, go. And 4. And 5. And 6. And 7. And 8. And 9. And 10. And that's it. Okay. And thank you, guys. That's it. Thanks for waiting. So that's the kind of fundamental way of putting strikes together in pass-and-nod fashion. We also have the concept of Lakot, as I mentioned before, which is where we think about Abyurda, strikes coming from Abyurda and strikes coming from Sarada. So there's the idea of basically being able to combine strikes in certain kinds of ways. So in Bernas Estocadas, if we throw a 1 and then we want to throw a strike that looks like a second 1, what we're really doing in the way we conceptualize it is we're thinking about the consonant, if you like, the fundamental number 1 strike, and then putting a redonda with it. So we actually think about it more like in terms of adding the vowel, if you like, to the consonant, or adding palabula to the fundamental opensa. What normally happens in terms of the movement is that you get used to this kind of like swaying action, and you are constantly moving where your stick is sort of driving your body in the same direction as the weapon. And the Lakot principle basically means there's a formal kind of drill. If you buy the Grandmaster's online course, put a plug in for that, you'll see that he's got a complex kind of drill there, right, for this exercise. Training directly with the Grandmaster, what's become obvious to us is that drill is kind of useful, but actually the direct training with the Grandmaster was much more useful, and actually the Lakot principles start to naturally come out in your movement when you get put under pressure in the technique, because you're starting to kind of find yourself moving from side to side. So the Lakot drill, basically, I start with 1 and then go to 2, which is a logical combination of an Abyurda strike and a Sarada strike. But then I would go from 1 to the next Sarada strike, which would be 4. I can go from 1 to 6. I can go from 1 to 9. I can go from 1 to 11 and 1 to 12. So we could then go from the next abueta strike from 3, and we would pair it up again with all of those. We could go to the next serrata strike, which is 5, pair it up with all those, and on we go. We can then start on the serrata side. So we start on 2 and go to 1. So now we're reversing what is our normal kind of pattern. We can go from 2 to 3. We can go 2 to 6, 2 to 7, etc. Right? So we start to build go from 2 to 8, 2 to 10, right? And that's the way the strikes actually build. But rather than kind of get caught up on the numbers in your head, the idea is to just get used to that idea of oscillating side to side with your strikes initially. And then we fill it out with the palabulak, which I'm going to show in a second. So if we go to the next set of slides. So what I want to talk about now is the geometry of the system. So that's fine. Yeah. So there was a moment in our training where the Grand Master said to us, "I don't think you understand the Dugway." And I have to say that at the time I thought to myself, I understand the Dugway, but actually we didn't really understand the Dugway in the depth that the Grand Master actually like the way he thinks about Dugway. So Dugway means form, like other arts would call it like kata, etc. And I think if you look at some of the Filipino martial arts that have incorporated forms in them, what you tend to see is a pattern of repetitive strikes that simply you turn in a new direction and you repeat those same strikes in the new direction. You turn again, repeat those same strikes in the new direction. But what's not happening in the movement is learning how to truly transition while striking from one direction to the next. And that's what the Dugway actually teaches. So it basically builds your capacity to move in multiple directions while striking and blocking so that the action is actually a fluid action. So what you can see on the screen at the moment is what's called palakat. Most Filipino martial arts talk about triangular footwork. Of course, when you look at this diagram, those of you who are good at tessellation will see triangles, right? However, the way the footwork is thought about is that at any particular moment in time, you're always the center of an asterisk or an estrella, a star. And you can step out into any of the 8 directions you see. So no matter where you are, there's always potentially 8 directional possibilities, with the caveat that it depends where your opponent is. So if my opponent is standing or attacking from the top left of the asterisk, then of course I can't move in that direction easily, right? Unless I'm going into jam him in somehow or her in some way, right? Which is also possible. But the idea is that wherever I step, that becomes a new center point. Next slide, please. So this was a standard template you already saw earlier, where the students move side to side and then forward, advance twice and then retreat twice. Next slide. When you're looking at the Dugway starts with linear movement. So we're going to see this shortly, where the practitioner advances, turns, and advances back, right? Next slide. Once they've got that, they move to the cross, where we basically turn in all 4 cardinal directions and learn to actually move, as we strike, as we turn, we learn to strike and block, etc. Then we learn what's called the U-turn. So the U-turn is like the linear sequence, but is where we break the movement at a certain point and return, like spin and hit from the opposite direction. The Grandmaster has many of these patterns, where there's an inverted T pattern, there is a capital T pattern, there's a capital I pattern, and there's even an H pattern.
There is, but there's not on the
there's not on the slides. Okay, so is that the last slide there? Yeah, you can kill that. Yeah. So what happens is we start with these kind of patterns. I call it the geometry of the system because what's happening is it forms the way in which we move on the ground, right, in the multi-directionality. One of the striking or signature features of the Bernas Estocadas system is the fact that it's multi-directional, almost from the beginning. It's certainly it's movement oriented from the beginning, but it becomes multi-directional really rapidly. And that is certainly a signature feature of the system, along with the combination of the consonants and vowels. So what I'm going to get, if I get I think we'll just get the thing like green guys up. Give the other guys a bit of a break. So what these guys are going to demonstrate and like it's going to demonstrate is Dugwai 1, right? Which is the first Dugwai they learn, which is to move in a linear fashion, to turn and then go back in the same fashion. So they move with all 12 strikes connected. So before, when I was talking about the ways of connecting strikes, we certainly had like strikes in pairs. We had them in consecutive sequence, but here it's a consecutive sequence of all 12 strikes. But I'm going to call the strikes individually because it's also done initially as a kind of tagisa almost move. All right, so Dugwai 1, saludo, prepara, and 1, 2, 3, advancing, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and turn, and prepara. This time, I'm going to count the numbers again, but I'm going to count them quicker, right? So you're going to move back faster, yeah, as if it's a little bit more combative. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and turn, and saludo, and at ease. Okay, so that is that's Dugwai 1. It's a Grandmaster clapping model. So that's Dugwai 1. Now we're going to do Dugwai 2, which is also linear, but is the defensive form of the same techniques. So again, advancing. Yeah. So saludo and prepara, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And turn. And back the other way. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and turn. You can see they've got some work to do on that one. Okay, thank you. All right, you guys can have a seat. I didn't mention before, but tug apart is also a way that we put strikes together, and tug apart sits somewhere between the Pasanod kind of sequence of movements and the Dugwai. So if I was to do tug apart, then we actually move in sets of 4 and it looks something like this. So we'd go, start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I come forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then retreat. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can also then we go to the next set. So we go 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then forward. So 5, 6, 7, 8, and then retreat. 5, 6, 7, 8. We also then go to 9 and 10. You'll notice each time we're kind of turning in slightly different directions. So we have 9, 10, 11, 12, and then forward. 9, 10, 11, 12, and then retreating. 9, 10, 11, 12. So tug apart kind of the tug apart kind of sits in between the Dugwai, certainly the cross Dugwai, and the fundamental kind of way in which the techniques get organised. So we get the 1 guys up. So now from that linear kind of fashion, the next thing is to move in a cross position, right? So we start with the master here. So we move in a cross position, and again, like tug apart, our initial attack comes from if this is the north, the initial attack comes from the west. So we actually pig R in that direction and then strike, right? And the pattern of the movement, we're always turning 180 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 90 degrees. On we go, right? Okay, ignore my strikes there because I was just showing you the same moves. Okay, all right. So WI3, saludo. Prepare up. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Thank you, and salute all. Then we do the depensa, again, in the cross position, all right? So same pattern. The difference is this time the opponent's attacking us from the front, so we actually defend there first, but we have the same kind of pattern where we then turn to the opponent's coming from behind, then the opponent coming from the side, etc. So it still works in this kind of like 180, 90 degree kind of pattern. Okay, WI4, saludo. Cover up. Sorry. Yep, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And saludo. Thank you. Right, thank you. You guys can sit down. Okay, so that's the fundamental WI patterns. If we were to do the U shape, then it basically looks like us going forward. Actually, I haven't left myself enough room. So we'd be moving forward with our strikes until we get to 7, and then spin with 8, and then we come back in the other direction with the other strikes. So that's the kind of way the U shape works. When we get into the I's and inverted T's, etc., we're using the 8 and 9 to turn to the sides often, but it's kind of free. So quick video. So if we go to the WI video, please. So what you're going to see now is what do those WI do? So to really understand the geometry, and then I'm going to explain how we build on this with the entire system. Yep, starting. So now you're going to see the same WI that were just demonstrated by the students, but we're filmed it from above. And so if you watch that yellow line in the center, you see I'm oscillating from side to side on the line. And being sun smart while I'm doing it.
Don't forget the baby stuff.
I was just protecting everyone's eyes from my bald head. Okay, so now we see the depensa again on the line, like basically following the linear pattern. But again, you'll notice the oscillation from either side of the attacking line. So now we see, no, can leave it back. Yep. So now we see the cross WI, so WI3, and you're going to see the offensive strikes done in the 4 directions. So you see here that the numbers of the strikes, this is what's actually happening, and we're moving the different directions. You'll notice in a moment when I do 11 that I move to the south first and then hit to the north. And now we see the defensive dugway, again from above, again moving in the 4 directions. And the reason we've filmed it this way is because it's super important for you to understand how, how significant the directional movement is in the system. So that's the dugway in multiple directions. Now what happens in the system is once you've learned those techniques, you learn to start putting extra strikes with the movements based on that pattern. So for example, if I was had learned the linear pattern, then instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., what I would do now is I would add initially an additional strike, so a Pala Bullock strike. So I'm going to use the principle of the linear pattern of the geometry with the principle of tugdua, like so 2 strikes. So what would happen is I throw my first strike and then throw a redonda, throw my second strike and redonda, throw my third strike and redonda, 4th strike and redonda, all the way. Come back. So fifth strike, redonda, 6th strike, redonda, and then redonda 7, then 8, redonda, 9 gets thrown as redonda, and then as depondo, and then 10 as redonda, and then depondo, 11 redonda, 12 redonda, and you'll see that basically that allows you to start building the strikes, right? In a kind of more fluid way. We can go to the principle of tug-tug-law, and there's kind of a couple of ways we could do that. We could go 1 redonda abanico, redonda. Maybe that's tug apart. I think 4 strikes there. And then the same. So we could go 2 redonda, sorry, 2 abanico, redonda, 3 abanico, redonda. We could add in wasiwas. So we could go 1 abanico, redonda, wasiwas, and then 2 abanico, redonda, wasiwas. You notice always movement with the strikes. So we're not just waving a stick. If you want to stop someone with a stick, you have to have stopping power. So you have to actually put the weight behind it. So you'll see all the time we're moving with the weapon. So the same pattern then can be used, or the same principle or concept can be used to teach the multi-directional movement. So if I imagine my opponent's coming from the side, then I have my 1 strike. I can abanico, redonda, wasiwas. And now the important thing is that I finished in a serrata position. I could combine it with the other consonants. So I could strike 1, I could strike 2, I could strike 3. So long as I end up in a position where I'm in a serrata position at the end of the number 1 strike sequence, then I'm in a good position to throw my number 2, right? So I literally can do what the Grandmaster technically calls blah blah, which means total free movement that's continuous. So I strike here, I could blah blah, I could throw some other strikes. So long as I finish in serrata, I'll be in the correct position to turn to do my next movements. So now I'm in Aviota, I'm in the correct position to throw my number 3 strike. I'm in serrata, correct position to throw my number 4 strike. So all the time, what we wouldn't do is we wouldn't throw, for example, 1, do blah blah, and then finish in the 1, like in an Aviota position, because I'm now not in a position to throw a 2. So if I then try to throw my 2, I'm going to truncate my power in some way. So the idea is to always set yourself up for the next movement. And I think, lots of Filipino martial arts think ahead like that. They kind of play a bit of a game of chess where you set yourself up to be a move ahead. So in this same idea, right, when I'm striking, I'm making sure that wherever that 1 would have finished is where I finish. And so I can move into the next movement. That's like a couple of the levels of Dugwai. So level 1, you're just doing tugisa, you're just doing the 12 strikes or 12 blocks. Level 2, you're adding a strike like tug dua. Level 3, you're kind of going tug apart, you're adding multiple strikes. Level 4, blah, blah, right? Where you can basically add additional strikes, so long as you understand the principle of Abiurta and Serrata in terms of where you end up and what you're going to put together. And you can see from that principle that I don't really have to think about the Lakot in a formal way where I'm going, oh, 1, what can I throw from the Serrata side? Because once you get used to moving this way, you automatically will find your path on what strikes actually work from the Serrata side. Once you get used to it, you'll automatically feel what strikes can be thrown from the Abiurta side without actually having to think about it. And that's kind of the goal, right, is to be able to move freely and fluidly in the Dugwai. Now, that same principle, the Grandmaster likes to describe this as learning to fly. So in that principle, you eventually learn to move freely, right, in multiple directions with whatever the weapon happens to be, with minor nuances. Now, one of the things that's really striking when you watch the Grandmaster's movement, and I think it's a key signature of Bernas Estocadas, if I only throw the consonants, so if I do a carranza and I only throw consonants, I almost threw a vowel. So you'll notice that it's not quite the same as when you add in the vowels, right? So once the vowels are thrown in, you get the true kind of expression of the system. And so it's really important that in terms of learning to fly, that you combine those things with the multi-directionality in order to kind of understand the essence of it. So what I'm going to get my video operator to do, if you can play the Carenza video, make sure sound is on. Just 1 second, I'll turn this sound off. So that's a bit of Carenza filmed earlier, partly to give myself a break. So you see there the multi-directionality, the movement, the combination of the fundamental strikes plus the pala bulak, and a little bit with the doble baston as well. So the way the next part of the way the system works, I apologise, we are definitely going to go over the 90-minute proposed. I'm going to get the groups of students up to demonstrate this all at the same time. They're going to be demonstrating slightly different things. Part of the reason for that is why we're getting the students to demonstrate some of this stuff. The Grandmaster and I were discussing it, and one of the things that is really important to him, as I mentioned earlier, is that learning to teach the system is a key aspect of the system, of the development in the system. And so partly you're having the students demonstrate is also to show you what we've been spending our time on as instructors here. So in what you've seen so far is kind of the abecedario of the system that then is built out, right, to make it more combat effective into what the Grandmaster calls pangawe. So Pangawe literally translates as combatives. And so our combatives are built on a set of partner drills. And the fundamental platform drill for Pangawe is actually Offensa Defensa. So we're going to get the guys to demonstrate the fundamental levels of that. Actually, I will just get the green guys up who are comfortable with doing. Actually, you can all get up. Actually, just going to do that one, right? So in level 1, there's a couple of things that this teaches in terms of core principles of the art. One thing that's important is what we call the nahangwaya, which is the crocodile mouth. So you'll see often, like our hand will be in a kind of almost like the mouth of a crocodile here, the nahangwaya is used both for pigar, which means pushing, but it's also used for kagat, which means to bite. So to actually grab, which might be necessary if I'm taking out the leg, if I'm actually going through pisar. So I'll show that again without taking out the leg. So if I actually bite, then I can get a disarm on her because I'm mobilizing, constraining the movement of the wrist, right? So that's one of the important principles is what's happening with this hand, right? But the second thing, or the most important thing about Bernas Estocadas is it utilizes a principle throughout the system of our contra cagada. So if you look up these words in Ilongo, which is the language we use in the system, then cagada translates in English as something like cargo. And our contra, in contrast or up against, right? So it literally means to go against the cargo, or if you like, against the load. And probably the most then correct everyday translation would be to attack the attack. It's a counter-offensive idea, right? So as I mentioned before, we don't really block. So we're not really going like a static kind of block here. But what happens is as my partner attacks, I'm striking their weapon away before I do my counter. So we're doing that against the force, right? So other systems might call this against the force. So I'm actually meeting the force with my weapon. One of the things that's really important about that is that it actually means your timing doesn't have to be as perfect, right, as someone who is in a system where they're just trying to follow the force. If I try to follow the force, I firstly have to be much faster than my opponent because I've got it there already initiated, I've got to catch them. Secondly, if I get the timing wrong and I'm in front of them, they'll hit me. If I'm too slow, they've just gone, right? So whereas they can move as fast as they like, and if I put my stick there, I don't have to move fast. I just have to have the right trajectory. However, if I really want to stop them, I've got to move what we call ora mismo, which means same timing, right? So as it comes, I move in at the same timing. If I could move antis, which means I anticipate the timing, then as she moves, I might immediately step in, pigar, and then be in a position where I can counter strike. If I'm tapois, then I wait till it passes, and that's when I hit, right? So actually we have those 3 timings. Our fundamental timing, however, is ora mismo, same timing, and it's done in our contra cagada. So we're doing it against the force. So what the students will demonstrate in the background is defending, we'll just do 1 to 12. So you're just going to go like and all the way through, right, to 12. All right, let's go. This is the fundamental offensa defensa movement. Once you've done 12, which who's attacking? And so the next thing that they'll add is the single counter strike. So we move to the tug. So that, if you like, is the tug yisa principle applied to the fundamental platform drill of offensa defensa. So then we move to the tug dua version of it, where I'll do my initial defense, pigar and counter, right? Or I'll do my initial defense, pigar and counter. So you see a single counter. Okay, let's go. Okay, so now if the then guys sit down, guys in green, guys in yellow stay up. So now what you're going to see is level. We're going to go straight to level 4, right? So level in the next level normally is we defend and then we put in multiple counters. The 4th level we put in our initial strike, and what happens is as we're doing our second strike, the person attacks us again and we have to parry and counter. The movements are the same, but we now have in play the Nahangwaya, right, as a Pigara, or in this case, a kind of waxing in or waxing out move, right? Right, let's go. So 1 to 12. Actually, I'm also going to get guys to do, I'm just doing that one. Yeah, just 1 to 12, level 4. Do it with the game, because otherwise, okay, we'll leave it there. Thanks, guys. So that's the kind of fundamental levels of offensive defensa. But offensive defensa then moves into what we call dogsing. And dogsing is a word that means like roughhousing or play. It also can mean flirting. So it's a kind of idea of exploring through the movement. So what would happen in dogsing is we would start with 1 to 12. And then we'll do that first, and then my partner will go random, and then I'm just going to defend we'll do the principle of tug to start with. Thank you. All right, so that's an example of dogsing at the first level, which is sagang, just blocking. So now we could go to dogsing at the next level, where we might do this. Actually, we'll show balas first, because we'll do the dogsing with the gear on at the higher levels. Yeah. So balas means counter. So you'll notice in the fundamental movement, the guys who are doing level 4, I block here. As I go to strike here, if my partner strikes back straight away, I'm really just doing like the tugisa move or a tug dua, because I've got a single counter. It's like level 2. if when my partner attacks, they wait until I pass here, and then they throw from this side, I've now got to find a way to handle that strike. So what we have here is, as they throw it, and we get one of the fundamental, again, a fundamental principle of the art or concept of the art, which is to change the elevation of your movement and your body and your strikes. So basically, we don't just fight here, up here all the time. We don't just fight down here all the time. The idea is to constantly change your elevation so the opponent doesn't really know where you are, and change sides. So what would happen is I'm up here and I go low, right? And that same thing happens with all of the fundamental movements where we've got that kind of principle happening in the way it's done. With balas, we enter into a different kind of problem. So I block and I go to counter. They're going to come with the one again, but instead of blocking, because I don't want to end up in this endless cycle, right? The cycle could look like this if we did that, which is our fundamental pattern, but we're not finishing. So to finish it, I add in the use of highway. I actually parry. So here, and I parry. Now they throw again, and I parry. They throw again, 3, and then 4, and then 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, and 10, and 11,
Sorry, this side.
and 12. That's the balas technique, or drill. And again, this can be made into a kind of dogsing. In fact, I kind of always feel this drill is kind of evolved out of dogsing. This is one of those drills where the Grandmaster, it evolved, I think, out of working with us as a group. And so basically it evolves out of that kind of idea of dogsing. And what happens is you get really used to, when it's done fast, they constantly have to change direction. You don't know where the strike's necessarily going to come from when it gets random. And so that's the way that kind of works. I just get my breath. I didn't mean to take my Ventolin.
Yeah.
Can you just grab it out of the bag for me? Thank you. So another important kind of fundamental way we talk or change the offensive pensa is what we call Agálon. So I'm just going to have a puff of my Ventolin.
Which means my turn, your turn.
Okay. So if we were to do a level like tugdua version of Agálon, it would look like this. So we block, we counter, we feed. And then we can add on the rest of the strikes. We can do that with all 12, where we've got a, so for example, if Beck comes with 4, so now I throw it, then I throw my 4. He throws her 4, I throw my 4. So the drill builds like that. We can do it with multiple strikes, which gets fun. So and you can do it like it's kind of random. So now if I'm moving multiple strikes, she can attack me wherever she likes. In that movement, what's happening is that basically, having done the initial defense, I then start adding in my counter strikes, and at some point she feeds. Now, one of the things about the system is you first have to learn to be a good feeder to make this drill work initially. So what's happening is that when I do my movement, my partner, if they're nice, and certainly the first level of it is this, they wait till I'm in Serrata before they throw their 2. And then again, they're nice, they wait till I'm in Aviota before they throw their 3. So they help me be in the right position initially with how they feed. Once you've got that, they can feed randomly in the movement. There's something really interesting about this drill with that in mind. Because they wait, they learn to read my movement and see when I'm in Serrata or Abierta and throw an appropriate counter strike that enables me to actually defend it. They're learning, they're helping me initially, but they're learning when to make it really, really difficult for me to defend. So if she doesn't wait for I'm in the right position, and the idea is I've got to keep moving, right? Okay, so that's the way the dog thing is kind of built. So now I'm just going to take a very quick water break. We'll just pause for a second. And then we're going to look at kind of the next phase of the system, which is the combat general, or translates in English as general combat. What it means practically in the Negros region, it's equivalent of Juego Toro, anything goes. So it's not Juego Toro as a competition. It's the idea of Juego Toro as do whatever you need to do to survive the combative encounter. And in that, there's then a whole set of principles that I'll talk to. And I'm going to divide this next part of the presentation into the three typical ranges that people think about in terms of FMA: largo mano, medio mano, and corto mano. Those three ranges are actually taught in a kind of practical sense, using different kind of weapons as a basis for learning that range. And then you get some blending. One last thing before I move to that. Actually, no, I'll talk about it. I will talk about it in the next bit. So just give us 5, and then, or maybe 2. We're just going to have a water break, and then we'll be back with the last part of the presentation. Thanks, everyone, for your patience with us. Is there any questions at this point, just while the guys are having their drink and coming back in? Feel free to unmute and ask any questions you have. I'll just say that what I'm going to show in this next part is now like literally move through. Up to this point, you've seen me do solo baston, predominantly a little bit of double stick you would have seen. in one of the videos. But what I'll do now is do some further work with the idea of the long stick, also a spadari dagger, and the sword technique of the sword techniques of the system, dagger saw, which is the knife-based technique of the system, estekiro, which is the unarmed aspect of the system against both against empty hand opponents, but also armed opponents as well. And this section now, what you're going to see is the way in which the Pensa drill is morphed into dogsing, and various kinds of dogsing, and you'll see how that basically builds the kind of combative capacity, or the combat general of the system. So that's where we're headed. But is there anyone got any questions they want to ask at this point? Okay, we're all good, it looks like. So I will keep going. All right. So what we're going to look at now is the lago mano aspect of the system, and I want to talk about that in a couple of different ways. One way is I'm going to show a little bit of the long stick aspects of the system, both the Ulysses and the Sungod. And I also want to talk about it in terms of how to understand the lago mano, but also to understand some of the unique kind of techniques that come out in the lago mano when using stick, and blade as well, like how it differs. So one of the important things is that when many people think about lago mano, they think about it as exclusively a distance from your opponent. So it doesn't matter which one. Yeah. So people think about it as a range where I can strike my opponent's hand, but can't yet reach their body, maybe, or something like that. And of course, that is one aspect of lago mano, which is to fight at range, to try, if my opponent attacks, then I strike their hand rather than necessarily moving in on them. And of course, all the Estocada techniques work in perfectly well in lago mano. And in fact, once you do your initial kind of learning with the 28-inch stick, you then shift to a 32-inch stick, which is a little bit closer to an Ulysses. So, in my bag, but I'll show you this anyway. So the stick is probably about this, about something like this length, and all of the techniques work just as well with that kind of longer stick. Now, one of the things about lago mano is that it's it literally means long hand. So, of course, it means long range, like fighting long-handed, if you like. A bit like in Chinese Kung Fu, the idea of long fists, where you're kind of fighting at range, as opposed to something like Wing Chun, which is close quarters, a bit more like Koto Mano. But lago mano is also a strategy of like attacking the opponent's hand initially, or maybe setting them up. So it might be, for example, come a bit forward. Yeah, I'll need you. So if my partner goes to defend the strike, that I learn to kind of re-angle my strikes. When we do that in Estocadas, we call it kawa, which means to rob. And the idea is to rob them of time to react. So I make them think something's happening, and then something else actually happens, where I suddenly change my direction and I hit them with something else. Almost all of the movements, all of the pares have a capacity to be put together in a way that works with that idea, and certainly in Takuwa as well. So, for example, I can also do this kind of movement, where she goes to defend my initial 7, but immediately my 8 hits her in the stomach. So, again, an example of kawa. It's part of what other systems would call the engaño, so the deception of the system, which we might also call lancy. Like, so techniques of feinting and baiting, for example. So if you noticed earlier, when people were throwing their initial strikes, they throw them in lago mano fashion. So they're doing it in a full kind of movement with full body language, right? Like full body movement. So this is a lago mano way of moving, right? So if I'm going, I can fight in close with lago mano, and this is, I think, the thing that people don't understand often, that when I've done my initial, I could have moved in medial here, where I can touch them with my hand and my stick is defended. But at this point, I can still hit with largo manual technique by lowering my body. So now I use batak to hit, and tumbada to strike down, and batak to hit, right? So tumbada is to hit to the ground, batak is to hit upwards. And by using largo body, like so a long body, I can actually hit them super in close. This is true even if I was using a so if I use my blade here, I might have used batak here, and then I can use again the largo body, even though I'm technically in a range where I'm actually, say, like medial here. I could use it in corto. So yeah, so I get here, and even though I'm like super close, I can use my body position to create the possibility of largo technique. So there's a few largo techniques that are unique. So that what you just saw there, tumbada is when we do it, we don't with a blade, we don't usually hit, we don't hit the ground, or we don't intend to hit the ground. With stick, we do. When you watch Corenza, or Coranza in Ilongo, when you watch that in Estocadas, there's a difference when you see it done with a blade to when you see it done with a stick. So if I demonstrate. So if I'm using a sword, what you'll notice is there's a kind of smoothness of the angles. So you don't really see so much stopping points in the movement. There's kind of continuous flow. You see lots of otso, figure eights. So for us, number 3 and number 4, you see lots of 1s and 2s or crossada. So this kind of movement, this crisscrossing movement of the body is common. You could kiwa. My daughter's worried. She doesn't know that I've been practicing that with a live blade. So no cuts. You notice it has that kind of smooth movement. When I do it with a stick, and this is one thing when you watch Grandmaster that sometimes is unusual, right, compared to other systems, but has a very serious purpose, is that when I do Corenza with a stick, you see these moments of looks like stopping on the target. And that's because that idea of hitting the coconut and snapping the coconut, we're actually transmitting the force. So you'll see these kind of pauses or deliberate kind of motions where we're applying the power of the technique. Whereas with blade, that's okay, we don't need to put away. With blade, you'll see I'm slashing, so I don't need the same power because I'm relying on the sharpness of the blade. The other thing that's important, can you go brief? You want that? When we translate fundamental techniques to blade, we do something which a lot of systems kind of, or a lot of people who don't train traditional martial arts kind of have opinions about, that are based on 20th century attitudes about blades and how they're manufactured, etc. The Estocadas technique for using the blade does not change the angle at that I defend at. So some people would say this: if a person's attacking with a 1 and I'm using a stick, I can hit it like what looks like edge on. When they get a blade, they often do this and turn the side of the blade so their weapon is hitting the side of my blade. So that's not our principal technique in Bernas Estocadas. Number 1, because we go al contra cagada. So we attack the attack. Rather than mentally have to shift my movement so that now I'm doing a pure defensive move, and in fact, wasting an opportunity to cut them, what I do is I just think the same way I normally do, and I meet that attack with my blade edge, and something kind of interesting happens, which you just saw there, where as I meet the weapon, by meeting with the blade edge and having that cutting action, I end up on top of their blade, right? So if you imagine, again, that same thing, there's a chance that I've already hit their finger or immediately can take their hand, right, with the edge of the weapon. So we don't actually change our mechanics when we're using the sword for how we meet the opponent's attack, because we're actually always thinking of attacking the attack. We're not thinking of pure defense, right? So that's a really important aspect of the blade use that's kind of critical, I think, to the system. And again, if you just get the stick for a second. So if we were doing the disarming of the system, so our first, actually we'll show it on 2. This will demonstrate it. So, so our initial disarm for 2 involves us bringing our finger up to meet the stick, rotating, and disarming the weapon. Now, that's like a level 1 disarm, right? If we do, if she comes with a 3, the disarm that I applied before is to capture the wrist and shoot the stick out here. If she comes with a 10, so I could scoot this around, scoot it out. Now, again, we don't shift our technique when we're using blade. So the techniques are designed to do this, the same kind of disarm with a blade. So when I meet that initial strike, it's this guard on the blade. If it's, in this case, this guard is not designed in the same way a real sword is, so it's sliding off, right? But I could easily still put my finger here, right? I'm meeting the side of their weapon, and then as I rotate, you'll notice the blade is always away from me in terms of being able to disarm them. Other important part about disarming, so if you come with a 3, again, if I move here, I'm now in a position where I can still go for the disarm in this position. You'll notice that one of the things, or one of the principles the Grandmaster uses to explain this aspect of the system is what's known as kaya and kulub. So if you happen to be a Cebuano speaker, you would say hayang kulub, but in Ilongo, I can assure you it's kaya kulub. So we think about disarming in terms of those positions. Earlier today, the Grandmaster was talking about the fundamental movement of the system. If we throw a number 1 strike, or a number 10 actually, a number 10 strike here, it's like a slash on the horizontal. If my hand is in kaya, then that's a kind of natural movement, right? If my hand is in kulub, then it becomes a thrust on that same line and becomes our number 5 thrust. Same with on the 6th side, if I'm in kulub, then I'm actually cutting in a cutting position. If I'm in kaya, then I'm in a thrusting position right on that line. That's not the only way we use kaya kulub. So we also think about kaya kulub in terms of the opponent's hand for disarming. So at the moment, if my partner came in with a number 1 strike, their hand is actually in a kaya position. So now if I start to move their position, I can take it like it's like a half kaya. I can take full kaya, right, to disarm them. If they come with 2, so they start in kulub here, and now I can turn their hand into kaya, so I get the disarm. So the kaya kulub principle is, again, like a super important part of the system in terms of understanding some of the more advanced techniques with blade, for example. We might, I'll just maybe keep demonstrating this. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. We'll go to, I'll stay with Lago Mano. I'll stay with Lago Mano firstly. So one of the other aspects of Lago Mano you saw me demonstrate, which I was making a joke bet because I saw her face when I was using a live blade to do kiwal. So kiwal is where we use parts of our body to actually generate extra force into the strike. Really important or useful in stick work, but also good with blades, right? So it's where, for example, I've cut and then I use a part of my body. I'll shift to stick to show it, where I use part of my body. It's a great stick.
That one.
Thank you.
Good demo.
So I promise you that wasn't set up in advance. So I hope I didn't break the floor. Oh, I might have broken the floor. So I strike here and I use the kiwal to generate extra power. I could use a kiwal off my leg. I can use a kiwal off my shoulder, all of which to generate extra force into the strike. Again, you can do the same thing with blade, but of course you have to be careful where the edge is. You don't want to take off your own head from your shoulder. So that's another important part. I mean, kiwal could be done in different ranges. The other part of the long range is a technique called Bernas. So in Bernas, what we do is we use a corkscrew action in order to strike so that we're both going our contra cagata, we're meeting the force, but simultaneously we're getting a counter strike onto the person. So if you imagine with a stick that as I'm hitting someone, I'm normally hitting in this path. And you hear a lot of people talk about, must maintain 90 degrees in the wrist and that kind of thing when you're first learning FMA. But if I go from Kaya to Kulub as I hit, then often the person who's blocking, the stick comes around the person's weapon. And so I end up in a way being able to hit around them and strike their head even when they're trying to block me if I'm using Berena, right, which means corkscrew. And so Berena is a really important part of the long stick method. Thank you, Manuel Chris. So Chris drew the short straw for this one. This is, many of you probably have already seen the videos of me doing forensic with this, but and I won't do it on the floor.
Yeah, I've just seen the floor. I think I need better gloves.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is like if Chris was to feed a Abiota strike, right? So number one, what would happen is I meet it with Berena and strike as I connect with it. My hand or my hands turn into Kulub. So I started in Kaya. As I connect, I turn into Kulub. And you'll notice that one of the things that happens, we'll just do a few, and you'll notice that my stick naturally kind of takes out his hands. Oh, that might be bad. And you can see why he's wearing gloves, right? I don't know if you can see that, but
some of them were above,
yeah,
and it bounced from the end of the stick to my forearm.
Yeah, so some came up higher, right? We can also do a kind of so now if he comes from Sarada, I can do the same movement, but now I go in the opposite direction. The other important aspect of this is that I can aim for his foot. So as he comes with his Abiota stride and I hit it, I can actually aim to get him on the foot. And you'll see that kind of, I suppose, you see that type of thing in Tapado. Now, one of the things that, again, is a sort of signature of Bernas Estocadas in long stick is once I do that initial move, from here, I use the batak action to take him out as I recover. So rather than an action that looks like this, where I go bam, and then bam, where there's a kind of 2-beat action, right? So we've got 1 beat, and then 2, 3, if you like, something like that. So now, if I do it with the Estocadas technique, I go 1, 2, and I've hit him while he's recovering. So the long stick is designed to kind of, again, sort of beat their timing. There's another thing we can do, which is kind of, again, a U-shape kind of technique where, yeah. So as I do this, I strike the weapon down and I immediately bring it up. Trying to be careful here for my partner's safety, but I immediately bring it up under his chin. So this is another kind of fundamental technique of the sun god. It's clearly a Largo weapon, like we try to stay at range. A couple of important points. It has the knob at the end. This isn't like you see, say, in Irish stick fighting, where you use the heavy end. The idea of this is not dissimilar to the use of a sword, where the sword has a kind of guard at the back that stops your hand, the sword coming out of your hand. So the idea of the sun god, these are a coffee stalk. And the idea is that, again, by holding it here and holding my hands fairly close together, it's not like a samurai sword where my hands are held apart. I'm not trying to cut with it. I'm actually trying to bash with it. And I keep my hands here so that I can get the Berena, so I can get the turning action in my wrist. And so we can use like redondas, our thrusting, instead of thrusting, that becomes, our pole becomes a thrust. So we can thrust with pole. You probably don't abanico with the sun god because the torque on your wrist is extreme. Whereas when we do that with the Ulisi, the shorter weapon, we support our own wrist and we can actually get abanicos with the shorter weapon, right? So it is possible. To do that with a shorter weapon. Okay, so that's the Largo Mano part of the system. So if we go to medial manual, then that's where we introduce the double baston. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate all of this because many of you have seen similar things, but I think it's...
Yeah. Just need to grab a number.
So in the double baston, the Grandmaster made a point that his system uses the Sinawali pattern like everyone else, but it's not based on the Sinawali pattern. So Sinawali pattern is used as a kind of transitional movement. We don't fight with continuous Sinawalis or that kind of motion, right? What actually happens in Estocadas is you've got to think like a boxer. So now every hand has got to be independent. So they might move together like that, but then you'll see actions where they're moving independent of each other. And so you think about it like a boxer would, where the hands are actually working in that kind of independent fashion. Where you see the Sinawali comes in handy is the idea of gunting. So when my opponent attacks, I may use the gunting and then pigar before I move into my counter movements. And then she might come with another attack. And again, I'm using that. I might gunt the other way. So we've obviously got two ways we can gunt in terms of direction. We could do the same low. So if you're going low, we can again gunt and then go into our single method, right? So one of those kind of characteristic features of Estocadas double stick is that kind of independence of the hands. The other thing with it is we do stick-to-stick drills, which are called santikane, which means sparking. So you can see the origin of this is the idea almost of like blades hitting each other, right? Because the idea that flint, you're striking a flint and you're getting sparks. So one of the basic patterns is this kind of pattern. Again, stick work, double stick work. This is all the footwork from the very beginning. So we can go high, we can go high, low. We can go low. Hello, low. And again, we can advance.
Oops, sorry.
And put it out. Yeah, so we can go high, low, high. We can add in the Sinawali pattern. One of the kind of particular features of this is where we'll start way out. So we go 1, 2, and then retreat. And then 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So we're changing the depth, changing the movement. So that's an example of some of the basics in the double stick of Estocadas. However, it moves from santikane and that kind of gunting practice to dog sing. So yeah, we'll gear up. Yeah. So Chris is just going to gear up. Now, while he's doing that, I'm going to get Beck to play a bit of a sparring video that shows both the single stick and the double stick, and featuring some of my illustrious students over here. Of course, I got to choose the video footage, they didn't. So you can imagine what it looks like. Okay. Oh, make sure sound's on. Sure.
exchange.
Oh.
And thank you, sparring partners. So okay, yeah, thank you very much. One's only as good as the people one trains with, right? And so of course the idea as a martial art teacher is always to get your students as good as you possibly can in order to have good sparring partners. They say kind of steel sharpens steel. So, you know, I thank you guys, but also, of course, I kind of think you need all four elements, right? You need a bit of wind in there. You need water in there as well. And for me, my development as a martial artist, in the presence of Grandmaster, with him teaching us like weekly, it owes a lot to the two guys who are helping me out here, Mananalo Chris and Mananalo Beck, because, you know, we wouldn't be at the skill level we are if we didn't like train with each other. I think that's really important. If you want to train with the Grandmaster, I strongly recommend that you do so with a partner so that he can actually really help you kind of develop. He's got eagle eyes, even on the small phone screen. He picks out all sorts of stuff and it was always giving us new ideas and pushing us to kind of incorporate new things. One of the things that, because we're able to train together and that has made a huge difference, as the Grandmaster said, teaching online is tricky. People's opinion about what you can learn online is tricky. I would make the point that all of us are martial artists of over a decade each. That helped us train online. I think if we had zero training, it's maybe a little bit harder. But training together and having the Grandmaster kind of be able to explain partner drills to us and have us do those drills in his presence has made a huge difference. So we're on the kind of home stretch. We're looking at kind of the medial mano. You'll probably hear my oxygen levels go down dramatically here because this is like pretty intense. We used to do this for sort of almost an hour and we learned pretty quickly the importance of rotating between each other to survive. So this is dog sing. What we're just going to do, I think we'll do this one with double stick, just random. And so what will happen is my partner is going to feed me. I'm going to be doing like the kind of blah, blah, like random strikes at my partner. And then, you know, he gets to feed whatever he likes in that sequence. And my job is not to get hit as best as I can.
It's just the stick, guys.
So that's we broke a stick during that. So
All right,
so
get in.
that's an example of the dog sing drill done in what we call Hanas fashion. So like serious, more or less. It's still a feeder responder drill at that point. It's not open sparring. my partner's basically feeding me the techniques. Now, while I get my breath, these guys are going to demonstrate some Sparta dagger.
Okay.
And then I'll join in. So, one important thing, and the reason I'm asking up to this point, you've seen our students demonstrating, but also these guys share the teaching in the school. As I mentioned before, it's like super important that you teach in order to learn more about the system, but also they sometime back, Grandmaster awarded us all certification in Sparta dagger. And so I thought this was an opportunity, while I get my breath, for these guys to demonstrate some Sparta dagger. So initially, what happens is we'll do the set thing and then move.
Yeah.
So initially, what happens is you'll see the feeder feeds a number 1 strike, and then 5, 6, 8 with the dagger. Then a number 2 strike, 5, 6, 8. Number 3 strike, 5, 6, 8. When they get to 12, they will switch to random feeds. Oh. And then go random for a few. So while Chris gets his civic here on.
Oh, I don't tell her that.
His breath.
Nah,
So that's the pattern of learning the technique. Initially, it's learned the same as op-density pensa. So we would literally do it as a drill. We would literally do it as a op-density pensa drill where we learn to counter the various moves in a sort of set pattern. And so, and on it goes right through. One important thing, when she comes, when she throws 3, yeah, throw 2 first. So. Yeah, I didn't strike. That's okay. So, so what happens is initially with the number 3, of course we could come in and block it, but because it's a blade coming in our leg, we also can retract our leg, cut, and then move back in. So that's the way the basic pattern of Sparta dagger is practiced op-density pensa style. And then what you saw the guys demonstrate of our 2-man law here was the same thing done in dog sing fashion. So now we'll take dog sing to the next level. Where actually we'll just go random. I'm going to put on my headgear as well, and he'll try to actually sort of get me, and I'll try to get him.
I want to not try and get that.
No,
You really won't.
Need a responder?
would you mind just pulling those doors closed there? Every time I turn in this direction, I get hit because the light
You can't
comes
see
straight into
anything.
my eyes. Yeah. And we're just closing a door because you might have noticed when I turned this way, my attacker was getting me because I can't see because the light hits me in the eyes. So they're getting a kind of Musashi advantage. yeah, just like that. Like bringing the same type of thing.
It's just happening with the speeder or something.
Yeah, that's it.
So, thanks, Shabra. So that is an example then of how it moves to kind of more random feed. Both got gear on, both going for it. Okay. So, we're just going to play another little video while I get my breath. And then we'll be on looking at the corto mano. So this little video, it's kind of a tribute to our training with Grandmaster.
It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory. Empty your mind.
Nice.
Shapeless.
Yes.
Like water.
That is wow.
Like water. Water can flow or it can crash.
Yes.
Be water, my friend.
Yes.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Water can
That's
flow.
it. Yes.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Be water, my friend. Running water never goes stale. So you gotta just keep on flowing. Keep on flowing. So you gotta just keep on flowing. So you gotta just keep on flowing. You have to train. You have to keep your reflexes so that when you want it, it's there. When you want to move, you're moving. I mean, you gotta put your whole hip into it. Snap, snap, become one with the. You gotta train every part of your body. I mean, you gotta put your whole hip into it. Snap, snap. You gotta train, become one with the. You gotta train every part of your body. Running water never goes stale. So you gotta just keep on flowing, keep on flowing. So you gotta just keep on, Under the sky, under the heaven, there is but one family. Do not believe in styles. Styles separate man. It's a process of continuing growth. Process of continuing. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. Water can flow, or it can crash. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. Be water, my friend.
Yes.
So training with Grandmaster is a lot like that, sort of continuous movement, comments to add things in, but also amazingly positive and supportive teacher who is always encouraging you and pointing out the things you're doing well. So saludo, Grandmaster. So we're on the last stretch. I'm going to try to do this relatively quickly. So painlessly, I've got asked. So we're at the corto mano part of the system. So the espada daga and the doble baston, because we have that kind of dogsing drill where we're moving in that kind of lateral fashion, they actually really enhance your ability to operate in the medial mano area, where one of the weapons is being used to pigar or control, or you're hitting with the other weapon, etc. You're learning to move laterally, not just always dodge, to dodge laterally, not always retreat. But you'll notice there was times where we're retreating and then coming back in with our counterattacks, and also to be able to counter from wherever you are. So in terms of corto mano, there's really two kinds of core systems that play out in terms of kotomano. So one is the Dagger-saw system, which is blade subsystem, if you like, is blade against blade, or dagger against dagger. So with you can leave that open now, guys. Actually, but yeah, it was just more for when I'm sparring, when I'm doing the random stuff. So what happens is that one of the basic drills for Dagger-saw is lavane, which means blade first. So when the person attacks, I cut them with my blade, and then I pigar, and then I thrust at them, they thrust at me, and we end up in this kind of fluid. And you'll notice the kind of changing size, yeah. So that's one of the basic drills in Dagger-saw, and we can build that if we were doing blade against blade, so sword against sword. We can do it with the swords as well. So my partner will attack, and I'll cut them, and then I attack, and then they attack, and we end up with this kind of action. So then, of course, that's tagisa. We can go tagtua. So I can attack, counter, and then feed. Attack, counter, and then feed. Attack, counter, and then feed. Attack, counter. Oh, I messed it up while I'm talking. But that's the idea. So that's another way to practice the lavane, both as tagisa and tagdua. Same thing could be done with the dagger in kotomano. So we could go counter, or defend, counter, attack, defend, counter, attack. The hardest thing with these sort of drills is remembering who's doing what. But that's the fundamental principle of the drill. When we go to unarmed against the dagger, the other important thing with the dagger is being able to switch sides. We can also, for example, do this with double dagger. So where we would be moving out, switching side.
You would have seen this a little bit when we did a Spartery dagger, but just not to the same kind of obviousness.
Yeah.
Clarity.
So then we can go to Eskrima. So it's important to understand Dagger-saw means smoking daggers, and it literally is dagger against dagger. Eskrima is the name Bernas gives to his unarmed system. So everything's Estocadas until we get to the unarmed, and then we call it Eskrima. So level 1, person thrusts towards my midsection, and I stop them with my hand in this kind of V shape. So they would keep attacking, and I'll stop them this way. So this is level 1. Level 1's kind of really a base kind of way of understanding the move. It's not the most advisable maneuver combatively. So it really is just a base technique. The second move, however, level 2, is to use the same kind of nahan wire, but with a pigar, with a forearm. So we use this action. And this now becomes a much more combative move. You hear lots of systems talk about 2-on-1. That's exactly what's going on here. As she attacks, I jam, and I can use this to actually immediately move her hand in a position where I can get the disarm. Which, disarm again. So that's level 2. Level 3 really happens more if she's attacking me up here, and I use pay-on, right? So I've now got a pay-on position, and I can defend with a pay-on. If I defend with pay-on, then I end up waxing out in order to control. On the other hand, if I end up in pigar, then I can, that's still waxing out actually. I can, wax out from underneath. Yeah, underpass, sorry. That's a better way to describe it, sorry.
Overpass.
Let's talk about here, overpass, underpass. So here, I can overpass if I end up in pigar, then I underpass. Now, as I underpass, I don't do what you see sometimes in martial arts, FMA, is where I let go and pass it with my arm. What actually happens is that this hand snakes down to the wrist and it becomes a new knuckle wire. And as it does, I come back up into pigar on the other side. And again, if I'm switching sides with pigar, both hands are in contact, and immediately as I switch hands, I apply the pigar. And I might, of course, use some kind of pulling movement to gain some extra control, right, of the person's movement. So that's the fundamental principle. We can also just practice a basic drill where we realise there's kind of 4 points, if you like. And so at these points is where I need to be like changing direction. So when it gets to the horizontal points on the cross, when it gets to the vertical points on the cross, those are the points where I need to have some kind of control, or what I'm going to be doing is bringing the person's weapon into myself. So it's important to have control of those points where we're switching control from one side to the other. The other important thing about Istikido is, the use of Kaya Kulub. So if she comes with a 8, yep. So I've defended here. What I might do is immediately, so level 1 was that practice you saw. Level 2, I might just get control. So I've now got wrist control. And level 3, I now grip the blade and I snap it towards the forearm. So all of the disarms happen towards the forearm, and then I can stab, right, with the weapon, and then apologise, the Grandmaster likes to say after that, sorry. Oh. Yeah. Give them back their weapon, make it look like it's all their fault. So from here, I could, for example, when I get into this position, I can take the weapon so that I'm in patard blanc, which is a normal knife grip, for example. I could do it so that when I get into this position, that I now take it this way, and I'm now in pakal. So I'm in a reverse grip on the weapon. So all the disarms work by snapping the weapon to the forearm and controlling either, so that you end up in a patard long grip or in a pakal grip, right? In terms of control of the weapons, the opponent's weapon. The disarms themselves rely, again, on me positioning. So here I take the person's hand into a kind of kulub position, but I can also start to rotate it further into further kulub. I can take their hand into kaya position. And again, it depends where I am in terms of, like here, I might take, instead of going from the blade end, because I'm in this position, I'll go from the handle end of the weapon and take the weapon that way. And of course, from here, we can start to move and control into whatever sorts of lock controls we want to utilize. So that's the kind of fundamental part. Importantly, no one's going to let you just move into those moves. So what happens is that as they do their first move here, I hit them immediately, right? So immediately soften the person. So it's going to be practiced like this. I might go slam onto their own leg, so to break their grip, and also give them a bit of stick on their own before I go into the disarm itself. And then I can move around and control and take control on the way. So again, we start with the thrust to the midsection. They then start to come with the thrust, number 5 thrust. They then start to come with the number 6 thrust. And so depending on which position I find myself in, depends on which way I wax in or wax out. Again, the opportunity to disarm may or may not be there. So I'm going to be striking usually before I go for the disarm, and then figure out, what's the best position here. Because of where it is, I'm going to grip the back of the weapon. I'm going to snap it again to her forearm to get control. I can then stab her with it. I can then use the weapon to control her arm so that I'm on the blind side of her, so that I can actually get in close and control. So that's an example of Estikido with a dagger. If she had a stick, then she could, again, come in with, I can strike however now, yeah. So if she strikes with the number 1, then again, I imagine, like I would normally do with the stick, I'm kind of hitting here, but instead of doing this, I'm not going to go here and have my forearm taken out. So I just apply it closer. I hit the own arm with it. And now what I can do is go for all sorts of distance. I can go for like a sexy disarm like this one, as Eskrima must say, where I just remove the weapon. I can, actually comes with a 2. Actually, come this way for 2. If she comes with a 2, then I can go here, catch the end of the punyo. And again, his one of his favourite sexy disarms. I can, if she comes with it, whatever strike, I don't mind. Yep. So if I'm here, then I can again take control of the weapon, weapon hand, and I can use it like off my own forearm, or I might dip it off her own body before I then move her into some kind of control. So Estocadas itself utilizes the same kind of actions as the unarmed with a weapon, but also like thinking like a boxer. So we're moving around where we usually start in a position like this, and then move in.
No.
If she could be unarmed as well, and again we're moving like with boxing. We can kick, we can grapple. So and the unarmed part will look a lot like a boxer moving. So all our strikes, our 1 becomes a hammer fist, our 2 back fist, our 3 becomes an uppercut, our 4 or our 11 becomes a back fist to the groin, our 9 could be a chop to the neck, our 10 could be a slap to the ear. We can just simply adapt the weapon part of the system to the different parts of the body. So I've gone over time.
By an hour.
By an hour. So I think I better leave it there. Grandmaster, shall I hand back to you?
Wait, sir, wait. Well, oh, what happened?
We can hear you now.
Okay, sir. Wow, 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 wow. I love it. I love the whole presentation, sir. Your explaining and moves are so great with your student. This is the proof that learning martial arts even online, the result is still good quality. Depends on how the teachers doing their jobs, sharing their knowledge to their students. And now I declare, wow, that Sir Robert is an authentic Agálon Grandmaster and MMA carrying the art from Negros Island, Philippines. Congratulations, Agálon Roberts. You are you really deserve what you've got today. But as I've said, that this is not the end of everything, because it's the time that you have to start the next chapter of your journey into the next level of the Filipino martial arts. Mabuhay, sir.
Thank you so much,
You are
Grandmaster.
really deserving. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Saludo.
Grandmaster Salaman. And
Yes,
salute.
sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. I love it. Yes,
Thank you
sir.
so much for your generosity in sharing your art with us. And you know, we look forward to every Monday when we're training with you, and actually now Saturdays.
Yeah.
And I want to thank, as I mentioned before, just coming out here, you guys. I especially want to thank.
Oh, I don't even remember.
Especially want to thank these guys.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone.
Guapo and Pogi, as a Grandmaster calls them,
Yeah.
for sharing the journey it wouldn't be the same if we didn't have each other to train with and to argue over what the Grandmaster meant by so the Grandmaster, I know he's been on a journey with English with us, and your English is fantastic, by the way, Grandmaster. I think, you know, all the guys will attest that
Just a little.
you explain your art very well, and we're beneficiaries of that. We
Thank
really
you, sir.
appreciate it. I want to thank my students here in the school, students in the school community here. Thanks, guys.
Yes.
Both for you know, the commitment to attending today, but also the commitment to the art, to, you know, going on the journey with us as well. And yeah, thanks so much, Grandmaster. I look forward to the next stages of the journey with you. I know this is just the beginning,
Yes,
and
sir.
and you know, I really look forward to traveling with you. Saludo.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
And
Thank
thank you
you.
for coming, everyone. Yeah.
Yes, Agálon.
So thanks, guys, who
Okay,
came
sir.
online.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, see you, everyone, and yeah, thanks for enduring the lengthy presentation. Yeah, here's my tumbada, just so you could see it. That was from the tumbada strike to the ground.
Yes.
That was a new stick. It was a new stick. Anyway, thank you, everyone. See you, Grandmaster. Hello, Mum.
Don't worry about that.
Hello, Mum. You're on mute.
I don't think she's on mute. That's right. We can't hear you. We'll talk to you later.
We'll talk to you later.